In the 1950s, Ford designed a car that ran on actual uranium, no gas, just nuclear power. It promised unlimited range, but was never built. Why? And what would have happened if it was? These are the wildest American cars that never made it to production. Number 1. 1966 Ford Seattle IT 21. A car with nuclear power? The 1966 Ford Seattle IT 21 was one of the wildest concept cars ever built. Ford claimed it could be powered by a miniature nuclear reactor, with a modular front end that allowed drivers to swap between 6 wheels or 4. It was meant to be the ultimate future car, with a cockpit full of radar displays, push-button controls, and even an onboard computer. Of course, it was all science fiction. No working version was ever built. But it captured the imagination of the era, showing how Americans in the 1960s envisioned the future of cars. Number 2. 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Rondine, the Corvette that looked more Italian than American. Imagine a Corvette that looks like a Ferrari. That's exactly what the 1963 Corvette Rondine was. Designed by Pininfarina, this stunning one-off concept was based on the all-new C2 Corvette Stingray chassis, but ditched the aggressive American muscle styling in favor of smooth, flowing Italian curves. Unlike the production Corvette, which featured sharp angles and hidden headlights, the Rondine had a much softer appearance, with a sloping fastback design and a chrome-accented rear. Despite its beauty, the Rondine was never meant for mass production. GM believed the standard Stingray's aggressive styling would appeal more to American buyers, and they weren't about to let an Italian coach builder dictate their most important sports car's future. After its debut, the Rondine was quietly tucked away until it resurfaced at an auction in 2008, where it sold for over $1.6 million. It remains one of the most unique Corvettes ever built, a glimpse of what could have been had GM gone a different direction. Number 3. 1954 Ford FX Atmos, the jet-age car with missile-inspired design. The 1954 Ford FX Atmos was pure science fiction on wheels. Introduced during the peak of the jet age, this wild concept car looked more like a spaceship than an automobile. Its design featured twin bubble canopies, a sharp-pointed front end, and most strikingly, 2 giant rear tail fins with what appeared to be rocket thrusters attached. Ford's designers weren't just playing around. This was their vision of the car of the future, one that would supposedly be guided by radar rather than a steering wheel. While the FX Atmos was never functional, it embodied the optimism of 1950s America, where anything seemed possible. It was never intended for production, but it captured the imagination of an era obsessed with space travel, nuclear power, and futuristic technology. Today, it stands as one of Ford's most extreme concept cars, a reminder of the time when automakers dared to dream big, sometimes too big. Number 4. 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona 3, the aero car that was too fast for the streets. By 1969, Dodge was locked in a high-speed battle in NASCAR, and the Charger Daytona had already proven to be a game-changer. But Dodge wasn't done. They planned a successor, the Daytona 3, a more extreme version that featured an even longer aerodynamic nose cone, a massive rear wing, and ultra-lightweight construction that made it almost too fast for its own good. The problem? NASCAR was beginning to crack down on aerodynamically modified cars that gave unfair advantages. By 1971, new rules were introduced that capped the engine size of aero cars to just 305 cubic inches, making the Daytona 3 irrelevant before it ever got the chance to race. Dodge shelved the project, and the car was never produced. However, had it been built, it could have been one of the most dominant race cars of its time. Today, it remains a forgotten what-if in the world of muscle car history. Number 5. 1955 Lincoln Futura, the the concept that became the Batmobile. If the 1955 Lincoln Futura looks familiar, that's because it later became the most famous car in television history, the 1966 Batmobile. Originally built as a futuristic show car, the Futura featured massive double-bubble canopies, a unique shark-like front end, and a massive tail fin that looked like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Ford's designers created it as an experimental vehicle, testing new aerodynamic ideas and design concepts that were decades ahead of their time. Despite its wild looks, the Futura was never intended for mass production. Instead, it sat unused until Hollywood car customizer George Barris bought it for just $1. When he was asked to build a Batmobile for the 1966 Batman TV show, Barris quickly modified the Futura, turning it into the most iconic movie car ever. Today, the original Batmobile is worth millions, making it one of the most famous concept cars in history. Number 6. 1970 Chevrolet Corvette XP882, GM's mid-engine Corvette that came too early. Long before the modern mid-engine C8 Corvette, GM had already built a prototype that could have changed history. The XP882, developed in 1970, was a mid-engine Corvette concept that looked decades ahead of its time. GM had planned to introduce it as an ultra-high-performance Corvette to rival European exotics like Ferrari and Lamborghini. However, as development progressed, GM executives got cold feet. The oil crisis of the early 1970s made high-performance cars look risky, and GM wasn't sure if the public was ready for a mid-engine Corvette. The project was shelved, and it took nearly 50 years before the Corvette finally went mid-engine with the C8 in 2020. Number 7. 1957 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham car, the luxury car that was too luxurious. The 1957 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham car was meant to be the ultimate expression of luxury. It was designed with a chauffeur-driven open-air front compartment, allowing the driver to sit exposed while the rear passengers enjoyed a fully enclosed, ultra-luxurious cabin. The car featured gold-plated interior accents, a liquor cabinet, and even a perfume dispenser built into the dashboard. Cadillac knew this car would be expensive, but when they realized the price tag would exceed $20,000, $200,000 plus today, they scrapped it. Even for Cadillac's wealthiest customers, it was just too much. Today, only one prototype exists, and it remains one of the most over-the-top Cadillac concepts ever created. Number 8. 1956 Chrysler Norseman, the lost concept that sank with the Andrea Doria. The 1956 Chrysler Norseman was meant to be a technological marvel, an automobile so futuristic that it could have reshaped the entire industry. Designed by Chrysler's head of styling, Virgil Exner, and hand-built by Ghia in Italy, the Norseman was ahead of its time with a sleek, pillarless roof supported by hidden steel reinforcements, a feature that would have influenced future hardtop designs. It also had a dramatically sloped rear, fully covered wheels, and a unique cantilevered roof with no A-pillars, giving it an uninterrupted glass canopy effect. Chrysler planned to unveil the Norseman as the showstopper of their 1957 lineup. But tragically, the car never even touched American soil. It was being shipped aboard the Italian ocean liner Andrea Doria when disaster struck. The ship collided with the Stockholm off the coast of Massachusetts, sinking into the Atlantic with the Norseman still inside. To this day, it remains at the bottom of the ocean, one of the most famous lost cars in history. Number 9. 1959 Cadillac Cyclone, the car with radar crash detection. Long before modern cars had collision avoidance systems, Cadillac had already experimented with the idea. The 1959 Cadillac Cyclone was an ultra-futuristic concept car equipped with radar sensors in its nose, designed to detect obstacles and warn the driver of potential collisions. It also featured a jet-inspired bubble canopy that retracted automatically when the driver opened the door, making it feel like something out of a sci-fi movie. The Cyclone's sleek, space-age styling made it one of the most futuristic-looking cars ever created. However, the cost and complexity of its radar system meant it never went into production. Decades later, modern luxury cars have finally adopted the same collision avoidance technology that Cadillac pioneered in 1959, proving that some ideas were simply ahead of their time. Number 10. 1970 AMC AMX/3, America's almost exotic supercar. In the late 1960s, AMC wanted to prove it could compete with the best sports car manufacturers in the world. Their answer? The AMX/3, a stunning mid-engine supercar developed with the help of Italian designer Giorgetto Giugiaro and BMW engineers. The AMX Buck 3 was powered by a 340 horsepower, 390 cubic inch AMC V8, giving it an estimated top speed of 160 miles per hour, which would have made it one of the fastest American cars of its time. Just 6 hand-built prototypes were completed before AMC pulled the plug. The high production costs, combined with AMC's financial struggles, meant the AMX/3 never reached mass production. However, the few that were built have become some of the most valuable AMC cars in existence, with one selling for over $900,000 at auction. If this car had made it to the market, it could have put AMC in the same league as Ferrari and Lamborghini. Number 11. 1953 Buick Wildcat. Wine, the dream car with aircraft tech. The 1953 Buick Wildcat. I was Buick's attempt to build the ultimate dream car. It was designed as an experimental vehicle with cutting-edge features borrowed from the aerospace industry. The Wildcat I featured fiberglass body panels, a brand new technology at the time, a wraparound windshield, and a push-button transmission mounted on the dashboard. Under the hood was a 322 cubic inch Nailhead V8, which gave it impressive performance for the era. Despite its beauty and innovation, the Wildcat I was never intended for production. It was a pure concept car built to showcase Buick's vision for the future. Some of its design elements, like the wraparound windshield, eventually made their way into production models, but the car itself remained a one-off. Today, the Wildcat I is a reminder of Buick's daring experimentation in the 1950s, an era when automakers weren't afraid to dream big. Number 12. 1969 Chevrolet Astro 3, the jet-powered Chevrolet. The 1969 Chevrolet Astro 3 looked like it belonged on an aircraft carrier rather than a highway. Inspired by the jet age, this bizarre concept car was shaped like a fighter jet, complete with a cockpit-style cabin, a pointed nose, and tiny rear wheels hidden beneath its body. But the real kicker? It was powered by a gas turbine engine, similar to what you'd find in a helicopter. Chevrolet engineers wanted to see if turbine power could replace traditional V8 engines, but the technology proved too expensive and impractical for consumer vehicles. Gas turbines had poor fuel efficiency, and they required incredibly high temperatures to operate, making them unreliable for daily driving. While the Astro 3 never went into production, it remains one of the most radical concept cars GM ever built, a fascinating relic from a time when automakers thought the future would be powered by jet engines. Number 13. 1977 Chrysler Cordoba de Oro, the luxury coupe that never got its gold. Chrysler's 1977 Cordoba de Oro, Spanish for Gold Cordoba, was meant to be the pinnacle of personal luxury. Based on the successful Cordoba, this concept car featured an opulent gold-painted exterior, a plush leather and suede interior, and real gold accents on the dashboard and steering wheel. Chrysler envisioned it as a high-end, limited production model for the wealthiest buyers, competing with Cadillac's Fleetwood and Lincoln's Mark V. Unfortunately, Chrysler hit a financial crisis in the late 1970s, and the Cordoba de Oro was deemed too expensive to produce. The concept disappeared, and Chrysler focused instead on downsizing and economy cars. If it had been built, the Cordoba de Oro could have been one of the most extravagant American cars of the 1970s. Number 14. 1956 Packard Predictor, the car that couldn't save Packard. The 1956 Packard Predictor was designed to be the company's saving grace. Packard had been struggling financially, and they needed something bold to bring them back into the spotlight. The Predictor was a stunning concept car with a wraparound windshield, retractable roof panels, and push-button transmission controls. It also had futuristic design elements like hidden headlights and a sleek, aerodynamic body that made it look years ahead of its time. Despite its groundbreaking design, the Predictor was never built. Packard was already on its last legs by 1956, and the company shut down before they could put the car into production. The Predictor remains a symbol of what could have been, a glimpse of a future Packard that never came to be. Number 15. 1970 Ford Torino King Cobra. The car NASCAR was afraid of. Ford developed the 1970 Torino King Cobra as a response to Dodge's Charger, Daytona, and Plymouth Superbird, which were dominating NASCAR with their extreme aerodynamics. The King Cobra featured a sloped nose with hidden headlights, designed to reduce drag and maximize speed on the track. Under the hood was a 429 Boss V8, making it one of the most powerful Fords of its era. Ford built only a handful of prototypes before pulling the plug. Why? NASCAR changed its rules, effectively banning these aero warriors by limiting engine sizes for cars with extreme aerodynamic modifications. With no reason to continue production, Ford canceled the King Cobra before it ever hit the track. Today, the surviving prototypes are some of the rarest and most valuable Ford muscle cars ever built. Number 18. 1962 Ford Cougar II, the Corvette killer that never happened. In the early 1960s, Ford was desperate to compete with Chevrolet's Corvette in the two-seater sports car market. Their answer? The 1962 Ford Cougar II, a sleek European-inspired sports car powered by a high-performance 260 cubic inch V8, capable of reaching speeds over 170 miles per hour, an astonishing feat for the era. The Cougar II featured a low-slung fastback design, hidden headlights, and a lightweight fiberglass body, making it a serious contender against the Corvette. It was meant to be Ford's halo sports car, offering a perfect blend of American muscle and European sophistication. However, just as development was progressing, Ford shifted its focus to a new project, the Ford Mustang. Executives decided that a small, affordable pony car had more market potential than a Corvette competitor. The Cougar II was quietly shelved, and the Mustang was born. Today, the Cougar II remains one of Ford's greatest what-if cars, a forgotten masterpiece that could have changed American sports car history. Number 19. 1955 Chevrolet Biscayne, the forgotten dream car. The 1955 Chevrolet Biscayne was a futuristic concept car designed to showcase Chevrolet's vision for the future. It featured an ultra-modern pillarless hardtop design, curved glass windows, and a wraparound windshield that gave it a spaceship-like appearance. But the most interesting detail? It had suicide doors that opened in reverse, creating an elegant and futuristic look. Under the hood, it introduced the first version of Chevrolet's now legendary 265 cubic inch small block V8, an engine that would go on to power countless classic Chevys. The Biscayne was meant to push the boundaries of automotive design, and many of its styling cues later appeared in Chevrolet's production cars. Unfortunately, the Biscayne never made it past the prototype stage. After being displayed at auto shows, it was sent to a junkyard and left to rot. Miraculously, in the 1980s, a collector found the remains of the Biscayne and restored it, saving one of Chevrolet's most fascinating lost cars. Number 20. 1973 Pontiac Banshee 4, the car that foreshadowed the 1980s. Corvette Pontiac had a long history of designing radical concept cars, and the 1973 Pontiac Banshee 4 was one of their most futuristic creations. With its wedge-shaped design, pop-up headlights, and sleek fiberglass body, it looked more like a car from the 1980s than the early 1970s. Pontiac intended for the Banshee i4 to be a high-performance alternative to the Chevrolet Corvette, featuring a lightweight chassis and a powerful 455 Super Duty 5.8. It was faster and lighter than the Corvette, and Pontiac executives believed it could be a game-changer. But GM's leadership didn't agree. They feared the Banshee 4 would steal sales from the Corvette, so they shut down the project before it ever reached production. However, elements of its design, especially its aerodynamic shape, would later inspire the 1984 C4 Corvette, proving that Pontiac was always ahead of the curve. Number 21. 1960 Plymouth XNR, the one-of-a-kind asymmetrical speedster. The 1960 Plymouth XNR was unlike anything else on the road. Designed by Virgil Exner, this concept car featured a single-seat cockpit, an off-center raised fin, and a sloping asymmetrical body, giving it a look straight out of a science fiction movie. Under the hood was a high-performance 225 cubic inch slant-6 engine capable of pushing this lightweight car to speeds over 150 miles per hour. Plymouth built the XNR to prove that six-cylinder engines could be just as exciting as V8s, but the car's extreme design made it unsuitable for production. After making its debut at auto shows, it was shipped to a buyer in Iran, where it remained hidden for decades. Incredibly, the XNR survived wars, revolutions, and government crackdowns, eventually being rediscovered and fully restored in the 2000s. Today, it's one of the rarest and most unusual concept cars ever built, a one-of-a-kind piece of automotive history. Number 22. 1956 Pontiac Club de Mer, the jet-age supercar that vanished. Pontiac's 1956 Club de Mer was a striking, low-slung concept car designed to look like a jet fighter on wheels. With twin tail fins, a brushed aluminum body, and a bubble canopy, it embodied the futuristic dreams of 1950s America. The car was built with high-speed performance in mind, featuring a 285 horsepower V8 engine and an aerodynamic design that made it one of the sleekest cars ever built. Unfortunately, the Club de Mer met a tragic fate. Like many concept cars of the time, it was destroyed by GM after its show circuit was over, considered nothing more than a temporary marketing tool. Amazingly, a perfect replica of the Club de Mer was built in the early 2000s using original blueprints, bringing this lost classic back to life. While the original is gone forever, its futuristic design continues to inspire car enthusiasts. Number 23. 1961 Chevrolet Mach-E Shark-Murray, the Corvette that never was. Before the legendary Corvette Stingray, there was the 1961 Chevrolet Mach-E Shark-Murray, a radical concept car inspired by the sleek form of a real-life shark. Designed by Bill Mitchell, the Mako Shark, I featured a two-tone blue and silver paint job, a pointed shark-like nose, and an aggressive fastback profile that made it look like it was moving, even when standing still. Underneath, the Mako Shark was based on a Corvette chassis, but with significant modifications that improved its aerodynamics. It was intended to be a preview of the next-generation Corvette, but many of its most extreme features, like the pointed nose, were toned down for the final 1963 Corvette Stingray, While the Mako Shark never hit production, its influence on Corvette design was undeniable. Today, it remains one of Chevrolet's most iconic concept cars. Number 24. 1957 DeSoto Adventurer II, the lost Italian-American luxury coupe. The 1957 DeSoto Adventurer II was the result of a unique collaboration between Chrysler and Gaia, blending American muscle with Italian elegance. This stunning coupe featured a low, sculpted body, hidden headlights, and a panoramic windshield, making it one of the most beautiful concept cars of the 1950s. Powered by a 345 cubic inch Hemi 5.8, the Adventurer II was designed to be Chrysler's answer to European luxury sports cars like Ferrari and Maserati. However, as DeSoto's sales began to decline in the late 1950s, Chrysler abandoned the project. Only one prototype was ever built, and it spent decades hidden in private collections before resurfacing at auctions in the 2000s. Today, it remains one of the rarest American concept cars ever created. Number 25. 1972 Chevrolet XP898, the plastic Corvette prototype. Chevrolet's XP898 was a revolutionary concept that aimed to replace traditional steel-bodied cars with a lightweight plastic chassis. Built in 1972, this Corvette-like prototype featured a fiberglass reinforced plastic body which was stronger, lighter, and resistant to rust, a dream material for car manufacturers. Underneath, the XP898 used standard Corvette mechanicals, proving that plastic could work in performance cars. Chevrolet even experimented with making the entire chassis out of plastic, hoping to revolutionize car manufacturing. But production costs, safety concerns, and durability issues meant that Chevy ultimately scrapped the project. The XP898 remains a fascinating look at what could have been a Corvette that might have changed the entire auto industry. Number 27. 1969 Dodge Charger 3. The ultimate aerodynamic muscle car. In the late 1960s, Dodge was obsessed with making cars go faster and sleeker. The 1969 Dodge Charger 3 was an experimental design that took aerodynamics to a new level. With a wedge-shaped body, pop-up headlights, and a futuristic bubble cockpit, it looked more like a jet fighter than a muscle car. One of its wildest features was a tilting canopy roof. Instead of traditional doors, the entire top of the car lifted up to let drivers in. It also had a fully adjustable rear spoiler, designed to maximize downforce at high speeds. The Charger 3 was never meant for production. It was a design experiment to push the limits of muscle car aerodynamics. However, its influence could be seen in Dodge's Daytona and Superbird models, which went on to dominate NASCAR. If the Charger 3 had ever been built for the streets, it would have been one of the wildest muscle cars ever created. Number 28. 1957 Plymouth Explorer, the Italian-built American dream car. The 1957 Plymouth Explorer was an unusual mix of American engineering and Italian coach building. Designed by Chrysler's Virgil Exner, but hand-built by Carrozzeria Ghia in Italy, the Explorer was meant to be a luxurious, high-performance grand tourer that could take on Cadillac and Lincoln. The car featured sleek European styling with a long, low stance, curved tail fins, and a minimalist grille. Under the hood, it packed a Chrysler Hemi 5.8, giving it plenty of American muscle to back up its exotic looks. Despite its stunning design, Plymouth never put the Explorer into production. Chrysler executives believed the car was too expensive to mass produce and would have appealed only to a niche market. Instead, it remained a one-off show car, a lost opportunity for Plymouth to enter the luxury sports car market. Number 29. 1964 Ford Aurora, the Ford that could drive itself. Decades before Tesla and self-driving technology, Ford was already experimenting with autonomous vehicles. The 1964 Ford Aurora was an experimental concept designed to test radar-guided self-driving capabilities. It had built-in sensors that could theoretically detect obstacles and adjust speed accordingly, an early attempt at the lane-keeping and collision avoidance systems we see today. The Aurora also featured a bubble windshield, a panoramic roof, and a dashboard filled with futuristic controls. It was Ford's vision of what cars might look like in the 21st century. While the technology wasn't advanced enough for real-world use, the Aurora was a remarkably forward-thinking car. Many of the features it introduced, such as electronic driver aids, eventually made their way into modern vehicles. If Ford had continued developing it, the self-driving revolution might have started decades earlier. Number 30. 1970 Chevrolet Cambac, the Corvette station wagon. Yes, you read that right. Chevrolet once considered building a Corvette station wagon. In 1970, GM experimented with a new version of the Corvette called the Cambac, a shooting brake design that featured a longer roofline, an extended rear hatch, and more cargo space. The Cambac was aimed at European-style Grand Tourer buyers, offering a blend of Corvette performance with additional practicality. It was powered by the same big block V8s found in the regular Corvette, ensuring it still had the speed and muscle car attitude. However, Chevrolet ultimately decided that Corvette buyers weren't looking for a station wagon. The project was quietly canceled, but the idea lived on. Many Corvette enthusiasts later built custom shooting brake conversions, proving there was interest in a high-performance Corvette wagon. Number 31. 1955 Dodge Fire Aero 4, the hand-built Italian-American masterpiece. The 1955 Dodge Fire Aero 4 was another stunning collaboration between Detroit and Italy, designed by Chrysler and built by Ghia. Unlike most concept cars, the Fire Aero 4 was fully functional and ready for production. It featured a Hemi-powered V8, an ultra-low body, and a dramatic front grille that made it look both luxurious and aggressive. Dodge had every intention of selling the Fire Aero 4 as a high-end sports car to compete with Jaguar and Ferrari. However, at the last moment, Chrysler's executives pulled the plug, fearing that the American market wasn't ready for an exotic, limited production car. If Dodge had taken the risk, the Fire Aero 4 could have been America's answer to European supercars. Instead, it remains a forgotten masterpiece, with only one original model in existence today. Number 32. 1969 Chevrolet Astro II XP880, the mid-engine Corvette that never was. Before the 2020 C8 Corvette, Chevrolet had been experimenting with mid-engine Corvette designs for decades. The 1969 Chevrolet Astro II XP880 was one of the most promising attempts. This sleek concept car was designed to bring Ferrari-level performance to American roads, with a lightweight body and a powerful V8 mounted behind the driver. The Astro II was meant to be Chevrolet's answer to Lamborghini and Porsche, a Corvette that handled like a true European supercar. However, GM executives got nervous about making such a drastic change. At the time, mid-engine cars were seen as risky, and Chevrolet worried that traditional Corvette buyers wouldn't embrace such a radical design. The project was scrapped, but the idea of a mid-engine Corvette never died. Decades later, Chevrolet finally made the dream a reality with the C8 Corvette, proving that the Astro II was simply ahead of its time. Number 33. 1959 Oldsmobile F88, Mark II, the lost rocket car. The 1959 Oldsmobile F88. Mark II was designed to be a high-performance two-seater sports car, a rival to the Chevrolet Corvette, but with luxury and futuristic styling. It featured a gold-painted fiberglass body, jet-inspired tail fins, and a powerful Oldsmobile Rocket V8. Despite its potential, GM's corporate structure at the time didn't allow Oldsmobile to compete directly with the Corvette. Fearing that the F-88 Mark II might steal sales from Chevy, the project was canceled before it ever had a chance to succeed. For years, the F-88 was thought to be lost forever until a surviving model surfaced at an auction, selling for over $3 million. Today, it remains one of the most beautiful, lost concept cars in American history. Number 34. 1974 Chrysler Viper GTS, the muscle car that became a legend too late. Long before Dodge introduced the legendary Viper in the 1990s, Chrysler had already experimented with the idea of a high-performance European-style Grand Tourer. The 1974 Chrysler Viper GTS was a sleek, low-slung concept car designed to rival the Corvette and Ferrari of its time. The Viper GTS featured a front-engine, rear-wheel drive layout, a lightweight fiberglass body, and a powerful 426 Hemi 5.8, producing over 450 horsepower, a staggering number for the mid-1970s. The car was designed to offer American muscle with European refinement, featuring advanced aerodynamics and a driver-focused cockpit. Unfortunately, the 1973 oil crisis and rising emissions regulations killed the project before it could take off. Chrysler scrapped the Viper GTS in favor of more fuel-efficient, economy-focused vehicles. However, the idea never truly died. Decades later, the Dodge Viper was born, carrying on the legacy of Chrysler's forgotten supercar. Number 35. 1954 Cadillac Dye Valkyrie, the extravagant dream car that was too expensive. The 1954 Cadillac Dye Valkyrie was built for one purpose: to be the most extravagant luxury car ever made. Designed by Ragnar Sundquist and built by the famous Italian coach builder Saucich, this one-of-a-kind Cadillac featured a stretched, handcrafted aluminum body, enormous chrome bumpers, and a lavish interior with gold accents and hand-stitched leather. Under the hood, the D Valkyrie packed a Cadillac 331 cubic inch V8, ensuring it had the power to match its regal appearance. Every detail was crafted to perfection, from its custom wood dashboard to its ultra-soft suspension that made it ride like a cloud. But there was a problem: it was too expensive to produce. At a time when Cadillac was focused on high-volume luxury cars, a hand-built ultra-luxury coupe costing over $15,000, $160,000 plus today, was simply unrealistic. The Dye Valkyrie remained a one-off masterpiece, a car built for a world that didn't exist yet.